Hello, guys. This is Antuan Carlisle, your Chief Canine Care Consultant here at CCC, and you guys know what time it is. It is time for Dog Talk. This is Dog Talk episode 8. Yes, guys, we're so excited. This is our 8th episode, and what better episode would it be for this one to be about one thing that is basically the backbone of what we teach. Very vital, very important to the household dynamic. It's funny, a couple of weeks ago, we was listening to our mentor, Bishop Stephen A. Davis, and he was doing a speaking engagement concerning government. And we knew, and when we took that as a sign, basically, that it was time to do that episode. It was time to do the episode that basically displays the backbone of what we teach. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about government. Today's episode of Dog Talk is, like I said, episode 8. The title is Governmental Structure and Leadership's Purpose. Governmental structure and leadership's purpose. We would like to start by defining government. According to y'all's best friend Google, government is defined as the governing of a nation, state, or community. And we're going to take it upon ourselves to personally add in home. Your home. So not only is it the governing of a state, a nation, or community, but also the government of your home. The second definition is the relation between a governed and a governing word. The relationship between a governed and a governing word. So today our goal is to give you guys a governing word. One that can potentially change your life forever. When a community goes without government, the people run rampant. By definition, they begin to get worse quickly and in an uncontrollable way. But not only in people, this proves to be the same in the animal kingdom. Animals understand the concept of structural blueprint and are thoroughly aware of the severe consequence of the absence of governmental structure. And in the event it becomes evident to an animal that their human counterpart is not just as conscious or as awake, right? Or just as conscious or as awake as they are to the obligatory factor of governmental structure, they immediately begin to perceive them as the weaker vessel by default. Automatically, your dog begins to see you as lesser than their alpha when they basically feel you out and see that you don't see the need for structure and governmental dynamic. So many people find themselves in a position where they feel that their dog doesn't respect them or listen to them. And what we found is not typically is the dog's disposition of disrespect and dishonor. In other words, most are not predisposed to this characteristic. The typical dog knew all about submission and authority when they left their mother. And it wasn't until they got in the human hands that they began to enter into a life of dishonor, disregard to authority. These learned behaviors began to manifest in the absence of proper government. And after this realization, or the lack thereof. So it's not until after they realize that there isn't proper government and there isn't proper authority that they begin to act out and they begin to display these undesirable behaviors. So in this Dog Talk episode 8, entitled Governmental Structure and Leadership Purpose, we're going to unpack some key revelation as to how we wind up in the position mentioned earlier and some of the consequences that happen as a result when governmental structure is not intact. Our first point is, when establishing governmental structure, only duplicate and repeat what works. Only duplicate and repeat what works. If it didn't work, don't continue to do it. And that applies to so many different things. I hear people telling their dog to sit, Fido, sit, Fido, sit, Fido. If it didn't work the first time, and sometimes we encourage you to maybe do it a second time, just to give them benefit of the doubt, to make sure that they heard you, make sure that you were speaking clearly and they heard the command. But the minute you start going into the third and fourth time, then you begin to see him as lesser than an alpha, lesser than authority. And the reason being is because the dog knows that he heard you. You know the dog heard you, and vice versa. So at that point, the dog has no reason to try to see you as alpha or respect you, because you don't even stand behind what you say yourself. We don't recommand. Immediately after doing that the first and second time comes verbal correction. especially if we know that our dog is educated and understands what that command meant. So you never want to repeat something that you've already said. You don't want to repeat or duplicate behaviors that you know didn't work the first time. But instead, the things that did work, you want to repeat those things. Definitely want to repeat those things. Don't let the dog change your governmental policies. Don't let the dog change your governmental policies. Keep in mind, your policies were put in place for a reason. They were put in place for a reason. They were put in place because they worked. Whether they did to progress, whether they did that, when you put it in place to progress your operation, whether you did it to protect your operation, right, or to prevent harm and danger in the future. Remember, policy was put in place for a reason, so you don't allow a dog to change your policy, no matter the breed, the size, the gender, or past history of that dog. Sometimes we have certain systems and techniques in place, and we may change it because it's a small dog, or maybe because it's a different breed and you heard that breed was smarter or more stubborn or whatever the case may be. A lot of times I see people have such a big issue with their big dog jumping on them, but they allow their small dog to jump on them. Maybe it's because the small dog is lighter and it doesn't cause such a ruckus when he jumps up on you. Well, at the end of the day, that behavior means the same thing when that big dog did it, that it means when the small dog did it. It means the same thing to them. It does mean dominance. It does mean disrespect. It means all those things. Dogs don't greet people by, jumping up on them. That's not them hugging you. That's them displaying dominance. And how you respond to that determines where they can go from there. How far can they get with you? So you don't change policy. If it's wrong to jump up on you, it needs to be wrong. Big dogs, small dogs, Chow Chow, German Shepherds, Shar-Peis, Bulldogs, whatever the case may be. But you don't let the dog change your governmental policy. If you allow a dog to change your government, you allow them to change your progress. If you allow a dog to change your government, you allow them to change your progress. So if what you've been doing has worked, if you've created the most phenomenal dog in the past with your system, don't change your system because you've gotten a new dog, or because you heard that new dog's breed is different, or you heard that new dog's temperament and typical characteristics are different. Don't change your system if it worked with that last dog. All dogs are different, but all dogs are still dogs. So with that being said, a lot of your influence that you had on that last dog that made him that perfect dog, or some people would call it their ride or die. What made that dog that ride or die is, yes, some genetic disposition and things like that, but the greater part of that is the government that was in place. The rules and policies that were in place, the way you praised, the way you corrected, the way you greeted that dog, the things you allowed, things you didn't allow. Those are the things that makes and mold a dog for the most part. So you don't let a dog change your government, right? And you have to remember that all dogs are still dogs. Although different breeds, although different personalities, they're still dogs. Your dog will eventually realize that your government is for their benefit. Your dog will eventually realize that your government is there for their benefit. They'll realize if you hold to your government, and if they have time to acclimate to your government, they'll realize that there is structure, there is boundaries, there is rules, there is a skeleton to this body. Once they realize that, they'll understand that it's for their benefit automatically, just because there's structure to it. But in turn, they'll also find out that it's what keeps them safe. It's what keeps them fed at a certain time. It's what keeps them watered. It's what keeps them from disease. It's what keeps them from getting hit by a car. Different examples like that. Your structure and your government being in place is what keeps them safe. And they will realize that with time, with consistency, and with you following the same policy, the same protocol on a regular basis, they will realize that it's for their benefit. The progress of your operation or home dynamic is determined by the government in place. No matter what you think, or no matter what I think that my household, my household is in the condition of, it's because of the government that I put in place. No matter what I think, my household is in the condition that it's in because of the government that I put in place. Good or bad. Good or bad. As the head of my household and as the leader of my pack, I understand that the condition that my household is in is due to the government that I put in place. It's due to the government that I put in place. If I put in place bad government, I'm going to have bad results. If I put in place good government, I'm going to get good results. So I have to take responsibility for the condition that my household is in and also the members in my household or pack. If you keep government intact, you will duplicate your ride or die. Earlier I mentioned that some people may refer to that one special dog in their pack as their ride or die, right? That ride or die is that way for a reason. As we said before, it's because of how you raise that dog. And guess what? You can raise your other dogs the same way, the other members of your pack, or that ride or die that you had, 20 years ago. And you decided now that you're an adult or whatever the case may be that you want to get another dog like that. Keep your government intact. Even if that dog has a different personality or a different attitude, keep your government intact. Always keep your government intact. As we said before, all dogs are different, but all dogs are still dogs. Train them up in the way that they should go, and when they are older, they won't depart from it. So although your new dog may stray slightly because of the personality differences, there will be little difference between them and your ride or die. So like I said before, if you've had a dog before, let's say he was a Shetland sheepdog, right? And he was this awesome dog, your ride or die, your best friend, and all these things. And now later on in life, you decide to get you another one. No matter what that dog's temperament is, put that same government in place. Put that same government in place. And see, despite their differences in characteristics, despite their differences in personality, there will still be a great amount of similarity between those two dogs because of the government that was put in place. We run into that a lot when people say, I've had dogs all my life and this dog is just different. That dog may very well be very different. But I can guarantee you, if you put the same government in place, you'll see that dog come all the way back around to very close to what you started with the other dog. Now, yeah, there'll be some adjustments. Yeah, there'll be some slight differences. You may have a naturally resistant dog where at first you had a naturally submissive dog, but that same government comes with slight adjustments that you control, not them. They don't control it. So if you need to mold that structure just a little, and when I say a little, I mean just a little, for the most part, you want to keep it the same. You're going to mold that dog back into what you started with the other dog, with very, very little differences and a great large amount of similarity. When this isn't the case, it is apparent that your government has shifted. When the government is intact, dogs can't be dog aggressive. They can't be people aggressive. They can't have separation anxiety. They can't be fearful. They can't be comfortable in resistance to authority. With the exception of predisposed genetic conditions, your dog has to be what you mold them into, good or bad. So like I said, a lot of the issues that you're dealing with, or say you began to see manifest in your new dog that you didn't see in the old dog, that's understandable. I definitely understand that. But at the same time, with the proper government still in place, right? The proper original government, only changed by you with improvements only, the dog has to be what you made him to be. You have God-given dominion over creation. Alpha in the wild understands this concept. They understand that not lining up with their vision for home and pack dynamic is not acceptable, and it is grounds for the removal of the said member of that pack. So with this in mind, if such removal is not an option, in other words, you don't plan on getting rid of your dog, you have to understand that putting submission and authority in place is also not optional. You're going to have to take control of that situation. If you don't plan on getting rid of that dog, right, you're going to have to make sure that you establish government and you establish it in a way that is fitting for what you seem and deem acceptable for your home and your pack. You can tell when you walk into a house where there's dogs and there's no government. I can tell just as sure as I'm standing here or sitting here doing this episode. I can tell. When I go into a home, I can tell immediately if there's no government. I can tell immediately if there's no government. I can tell what's being allowed. I can tell what's being praised. I can tell what's being corrected. I can tell immediately. Just like when some people go in some churches or some schools, you can tell what kind of government's in place just by how the people that are, or dogs that are involved in that operation, how they act. You can tell how they act by what, you can tell what government's in place by how they act. When a dog owner has government in place, the dogs just do better. When a dog owner has government in place, the dogs feel better. No confusion, no stress, no frustration, no anxiety, and no unnecessary heartbreak. When government is in place, very little of these things would be present. The dog won't be walking around with their ears back, confused, panting all the time with a lot of pressure on them. There won't be a lot of frustration with Alpha because he has rules and he stands behind them. There's not going to be a lot of unnecessary heartbreak. I've met people who had, and this kind of reflects on all of what we've been talking about, but I've had clients literally, their first dog got hit by a car, their second dog got hit by a car, their fourth dog got hit by a car, and they're with me now to buy a bulldog because their fifth dog got hit by a car. Now, we're going to have a long talk before you get one of my bulldogs, but that's a pattern. So what has changed, or what has not changed? The government that's in place, your policies that are in place, your structure that is not in place, the way that you have raised up these puppies and the things that you didn't praise or didn't correct. That's the reason why you have that pattern. It's the government. It's not the dog. And it's crazy because they were telling me that each dog, with the exception of one or two, were all different breeds. Some of them were puppies that they got at a young age. Some of them were, teenage dogs. Some of them were adult dogs. That's something with the government. That's something with the government. And those things have to be changed. I've had clients who had dogs choke on socks and things like that. Multiple dogs. And I'm like, that's the government. What kind of policies do you have in place in your home? Is it policy to leave socks laying around? Or is it policy to pick them up? Right? And was it okay when you saw that dog playing with that sock, chewing on that sock? Did you think it was funny? Right? Are socks to be chewed on? Is a sock a chew toy? So many things that need to be asked. And guess who you ask? The governor. You ask who the head of government. You ask the person that's in charge of policy. You ask the person who's in charge of creating boundaries and rules and structure and discipline. That's who you ask, not the puppy. It's not typical that puppies choke on socks. No, it ain't nowhere near as common as you would think. I don't have a puppy that's ever even seen a sock or touched a sock. Because it ain't governmental policy around here to leave socks laying around. Especially when you have puppies running around being curious and investigating and wanting to chew on things. So it all goes back to the government. All right? When a person has government in place, fear has no place. Fear has no place. When a person has government in place, destructiveness has no place. When a person has government in place, a dog having emergency surgery because they swallowed something that they shouldn't have has no place. When a person has government in place, kids don't get mauled and attacked. Dogs don't get hit by cars when a person has government in place. Dogs don't jump up on people and cause severe injury from knocking them down when there's government in place. When someone has government in place, the dogs don't fight each other. They don't have sibling rivalry when proper government is in place. When things like this start to happen, somebody has started shifting their government, voluntarily or involuntarily. I want to elaborate. When a person has proper government in place, I stated that fear has no place. When the alpha or the leadership of that pack walks in confidence and they cause their dogs to walk in confidence, when they praise confidence and bravery and they correct fear and overly submissiveness towards things that they have no business being submissive to. I've done so many rehabilitations on dogs that were skittish and just scary and things like that. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about predisposed genetic conditions. I'm talking about learned behavior. I'm talking about dogs that are scared of things because they learn to be scared of things. You know, these types of things are handled by government. The government in the home, the alpha in the home, is responsible for socializing the dog, exposing them to certain things. When they expose them to something new, if the dog displays bravery and confidence, you praise that. If the dog displays fear and skittishness, you correct that. Verbal correction, right? And we can explain, getting into how we correct and that kind of thing on another day. But you can control fear. Yeah. How do I know? My daughter's 2 years old, right? She is fearless. She's not afraid of anything. And absolutely no dog. She'll go in the cage with my Doberman and slap him. I have to correct her. I have to pull her back. If he look at her wrong, she'll fire him up, and I have to correct that because we don't tolerate that. You have to have dog etiquette. Children shouldn't be slapping dogs and pulling tails and things like that. But I just use that as an example. She's not afraid of dogs. And it don't matter if they barking or growling and that stuff because she wasn't taught that fear. My son, as you guys know, Debonair, he's not afraid of dogs. He's not afraid of water. He's not afraid of swimming, that kind of thing. A lot of times kids are afraid of these things because their parents are. They learn that behavior from somewhere. Even if we were to go biblically, we were not given a spirit of fear. The Bible says we were not given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of love and power and a sound mind. We weren't born with fear. Absolutely not. We were not born with fear. So a lot of times fear is a learned behavior. And who better for a child or a dog to learn from than their supposed leader or their parent? So fear has no place when proper government is put in place. Destructiveness has no place. Destructiveness. Before your dog was destructive, before he was ever destructive, before he ever put his mouth on anything, he checked up with Alpha. He checked up with Alpha. Alpha didn't acknowledge him. He began to investigate for himself. He sniffed. And like I teach my clients, sniffing is the beginning of licking. Licking is the beginning of biting. Biting is the beginning of chewing up. And chewing is the beginning of frustration for Alpha. Well, Alpha should have been at the front of that line and corrected that investigation. A lot of times people see dogs, what they call checking out the place. No, you ain't even check out nothing here. No, for what? I'll expose you to what I want you to be exposed to. I'm not going to let you take it upon yourself and put you in a position of independence to go, check out whatever you want to check out. So, because guess what? When you get through checking it out, then you make the conscious decision in yourself what you're going to do with what you just checked out. Am I going to lick on it? Am I going to chew it up? Am I going to pee on it? Government has to be involved. You have to be involved in that checking out the place. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to turn a puppy loose to check out the place. Because guess what? Right then, I put them in a position of independence. And when I put them in that position of independence, they get into a mind state of independence. And they begin to make their own decisions. Well, we all know that if you let a puppy or a child just make their own decisions, it might not always be the right one. And at that point, you fail them as a leader, as an alpha, as a parent, or whatever your position in government is. You failed them. So we don't accept destructiveness as a puppy thing, or that's just some puppies do. No, puppies don't do nothing you don't let them do. There's no destructiveness in the wild because the mother timely and effectively praises and corrects things that she likes and doesn't like. Just that simple. The next thing we talked about is emergency surgery. We talked about that one. We talked about emergency surgery because a dog has swallowed something that he shouldn't. How did that dog get to the place where he's consumed an entire sock or an entire phone charger? Where was Alpha? Was government on their post? Was everyone in their place to govern the community, to govern the pack, to govern the members of the community? Somebody dropped the ball, and it wasn't the puppy. The puppy operated in his position of independence that you put him in. There's something interesting. Guess what he did automatically? He checked up first. You wasn't watching. I guess it's okay. So I sniff it. Smells good. So I lick it. Tastes good. and I began to chew it up. Now it's destroyed, and I've consumed it and digested it, causing myself harm and danger. And guess who's liable for that? Not the puppy. Whoever's in charge of that puppy. The government. We talked about, it's very unfortunate, situation, but we talked about when a kid gets mauled. When a kid gets mauled and attacked. Very unfortunate situation. But it goes back to government. You watch CNN and you hear where a 12-month-old, I hate to say pit bull or German Shepherd or Chow Chow or any breed for that matter, has attacked and mauled some little kid. 12-month-old dog. Okay? Not even an adult yet. Well, we're firm believers that that dog showed you at 12 weeks that he was going to maul somebody. There ain't no surprises in dogs. Dogs don't just turn on you. And that's another term that we teach against. We don't believe much in turning. Now, if a dog is rabid and has rabies or something like that and he turns, okay, he's not in his proper mental state. I understand that. But just your pet just up and turn on you? No, ma'am. No, sir. No such thing. That dog only did what he was already thinking about doing. And he's been operating in that level of authority and that level of dominance over you long before he bit you and attacked you. But because it was never the perfect storm, or he wasn't put in the perfect situation, or he wasn't ever pushed to that point, or he wasn't ever challenged for what he got challenged for, right? If you've never crossed him or stepped on his toes in that way at that particular time in his life where his confidence level had gotten to the place where it had gotten, which that's also controlled by government, the perfect storm had never been created until that point. That's not him turning on you. Even to that dog mauling that child. That dog at 12 weeks, 9 weeks, 6 weeks, even then, that dog was already learning to bite. When you brought that puppy home and that dog was nibbling on your fingers and you thought it was cute because it didn't hurt and you said, oh, he's teething, he was biting you, right? It was cute, right? Till he turned 9, 10 weeks and he did the exact same thing and it hurt you. Then you said, ouch! Guess what you just taught that dog? If this joker ever doing something I don't like, I know what to do. Put my mouth on him. So that dog learned that a long time ago. He learned exactly how to handle you. Well, you say, well, why didn't it happen before then? The confidence level wasn't there yet. And you hadn't been a consistent less than alpha handler for as long as you had been when that incident happened. You see, dogs have to build in confidence, just like kids. Just like kids. Just like when that 17-year-old girl or boy cussed their parent out. They've been cussing their parent out in their head since they was 6 or 7. Right? Yeah. But they hadn't grown and matured in confidence in order to actually manifest and go ahead and say what they want to say. They've been cussing you out. Yeah. That ain't no... And then the parent may say, or the dog owner may say, well, I don't know where that came from. I can't believe he did that. I don't know why he did that. I know. Yeah. Because proper government wasn't in place. Yeah. My children understand respect. They understand disrespect. They understand what things are tolerated under this policy. They understand what things are not tolerated under this policy. They understand what this government allows to be said by a child and what is not allowed to be said by a child. So guess what? As they grow in age and confidence and maturity, when they get to that cursing age, they already got policy in place. And guess what? We didn't practice for 18 years holding that policy in place. You see what I'm saying? So nothing just comes out of nowhere. Nothing just comes out of nowhere. Now, don't get me wrong. Can they learn something from school? Yeah. But guess what? I'm going to have policy in place long before you go to school. Yeah, I'm going to have policy in place before you ever even see a school. Right? So that way outside influence does not influence my child or my dog. So, although I don't recommend dog parks at all, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that because I'm partners with some dog parks. But we all know that dog parks are a ticking time bomb. It's a bunch of people that don't know nothing about their dogs, don't know about dogs in general a lot of times, and a bunch of confused dogs that don't know their place and their role. Now we've put them in a position where they're in a new environment with a bunch of uncontrollable dogs just like them, and it's just a time bomb waiting to happen. It's a bite or a fight or an attack waiting to happen. But I said that to say, because I have proper government in place, and so do my clients, when we take a dog to a dog park, it don't matter what everybody else doing. No, I'm under proper leadership. I'm under the influence of an alpha that has already explained to me throughout my whole life what's acceptable and what is unacceptable. So when I go to this dog park, although tempting, I see a lot of dogs doing things that would bring correction if I did. So guess what? No, I'm going to separate myself from them. Will I run and play with them? Yeah. But those dogs that are visibly, naturally resistant towards their alpha, my dog going to stay away from them. He just understands. Because I put policy in place. I put an understanding in place. I put expectations in place. Yeah. So if my dog is running and playing, and guess what? Although government is in place, guess what government and leadership's purpose is to do? To supervise. So I'm watching him running and playing, and if I see him doing something that may be leading up into disrespectful or dishonoring behavior, verbal correction. Quickly reminds him, instinct comes into play and begins to communicate with him what he did and what he shouldn't do again. He separates from that temptation and he goes and plays with somebody else. It's awesome. It's awesome the way God created these animals to work. We tell people that there's two separate entities in a dog. You got the dog up here, the dog's mental or his soulish atmosphere, and then you have the dog's instincts, his spirit man, so to speak. I don't care to communicate with that dog up here. I don't even have to know your dog's name because I ain't trying to communicate with your dog. I'm trying to communicate with your dog's instincts. Yeah, because when I communicate with your dog's instincts, it doesn't leave him a choice. When you communicate and train with a dog up here, treats, clickers, things like that,